One day, when I was a kid, my parents and I went to a supermarket to buy clothes for me. I grabbed my parents' hands and dragged them to a very beautiful dress in a shop window. I wanted it so badly. This dress won't suit you. It's short and you have ugly legs. Why don't we buy that suit over there? The costume that Mom had chosen was terribly ugly. I tried it on and almost burst out crying. I didn't like my reflection in the mirror at all. But Mom insisted, and we bought it. A few days after that, I was walking down the street when I suddenly saw a girl. She was wearing the dress I had wanted. It looked incredible on her. I got very upset. My parents had been right. I truly was ugly. Hi, my name is Amber. As you might have guessed already, I wasn't born pretty. I had always hated how I looked. You can't imagine how many insecurities I had. Despite that, I dated the coolest guy in college. Fred also constantly reminded me that I was ugly. He was very handsome and the life of the party. One day, he invited me and his friends to a party. I was a good cook, and Fred asked me to make something delicious. I brought my famous hamburgers to the party. Everyone immediately snapped them up and praised him, but I could hear Fred's friends whispering behind my back. Why is he dating such a plain-looking girl? Sure, she's a great cook, but other than that was pretty unpleasant to hear. The most annoying thing was that Fred didn't even try to stand up for me. He just joked and said that he didn't know how I'd managed to snag him either. But I loved him, and I was afraid of losing him, so I kept silent. After a while, everyone started swimming in the pool. That was when I noticed Fred admiring the girls in swimsuits. I wanted to join them, but I was very self-conscious about my body, so I just sat on a sunbed in my clothes. At one point, a girl called Cleo started hitting on Fred, and he was all too happy to chat with her. It was terribly unpleasant to watch, and I was about to leave when Fred finally stopped me. Are you angry? Cleo's just a friend. Let's stay a little bit longer, and then I'll walk you home. I didn't want to argue with him. I just picked up a cocktail and went back to the sunbed. However, after Fred got in the pool, Cleo came up to me. I don't know why Fred is dating you, but he's clearly out of your league. Well, that's none of your business. My mood was ruined. I didn't wait for Fred, and I just went home by myself. Let him hang out with that just a friend. And luckily, I was in for a pleasant surprise at home. Our relatives had invited my family to Los Angeles for a few days. That news made me so happy. Wouldn't you be over the moon? We got there the next day. I immediately met my cousin Theo. He was studying psychology and liked photography. The first evening there, Theo dragged me to the beach. I felt self-conscious and I tried to refuse, but he convinced me to go. We swam and watched the sunset. Theo sneakily took some photos of me and then sent them to me. I think they're cool. Would you model for me? Come on, I'm really not that much of a model. He immediately started complimenting me and assuring me that I was very photogenic. He was just flattering me, of course, but it was still nice. In the evening, I sat in my room and I looked at my reflection. Fred's words rang in my ears. He was saying he loved me even though I was ugly. Then, I looked at the photos of myself in the swimsuit again. I hesitated a little and I decided to send them to Fred. What if he liked them? He replied immediately, but not in the way that I was hoping. Fred told me not to embarrass myself and just criticized the way I looked again. Theo spent the next day talking me into modeling for him. He said that my looks were perfect for what he had planned. I was upset after what Fred had told me. He was right. I shouldn't embarrass myself again. But Theo kept asking, and I eventually gave in and agreed to help him. We came to the beach again and had a photo shoot in a swimsuit and summer clothes. Passerbys complimented and encouraged me. Getting so much attention was really unusual for me. I felt like they were mocking me. I still felt shy, but Theo was a great photographer and managed to get a few good photos of me. After the photo shoot, he showed me his profile on a photographer's website. Various agencies often search for models on there. He boasted that he'd even worked for a large company before thanks to it. And before I left, Theo once again called me beautiful. He said that I just lacked the confidence. Call me if you want to chat. I'll always support you. When my parents and I got home, I decided I would surprise Fred. I came to his place with no warning. However, instead of my boyfriend, a familiar girl opened the door. It was Cleo. What was she doing there? Soon, Fred appeared behind her and invited me in. I immediately noticed a PlayStation and a half-eaten pizza on the table. They must have been having such a great time together. Cleo looked at me and smiled condescendingly. It was infuriating. I called Fred aside to talk, and I demanded an explanation. "Do you think this is normal? You talk to her more often than you do to me," he said. Again, that Cleo was just a friend. I didn't want to hang out with the two of them, so I asked him to walk me home. Fred reluctantly agreed. He complained about wanting to kill a couple of more monsters in the game. But on the way home, he asked me who had taken the pictures of me on the beach. When I said it was my cousin, he gave me a weird look. Wow, was he jealous? The next day, I had classes in college. During biology, Fred and I had to work together and think of a solution for something, but we both ended up disagreeing. I was sure I was right, but Fred didn't want to listen to me. "Do you think you know better than me? I'm smarter than you." In the end, I gave in, and we wrote his solution down. But at the end of the class, it did turn out that he was wrong. See? I was right after all. After hearing that, Fred got even angrier. He accused me of distracting him. That made me angry, but I decided I wouldn't argue with him. What if he felt wronged and then dumped me? And then something interesting happened. In the evening, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. It was an agent from an online youth magazine. They had really liked my photos on the website and were offering me a job. I was stunned. What photos? And then it hit me. Theo must have posted the pictures of me in the bikini. "I'm sorry, but I'm not interested." I hung up and immediately called Theo. I scolded him for posting my photos and not even warning me. My cousin reassured me and said that the magazine was really cool. He said I should work for them. I disagreed and said I could never be a model. "Just look at my bandy legs. Everyone would laugh at me." "What are you talking about? Your legs are fine. These are all just dumb insecurities." He hung up on me and then gave me a video call. Theo studied psychology for a reason. He tried to figure out why I lacked confidence. He made me do all sorts of fun tests. And I remembered that it all began in my childhood. My parents had always said I was smart, but pretty ugly. Mom often joked about it. "You didn't get your looks from me, that's for sure." I had started to feel self-conscious and consider myself ugly. Then I had met Fred, who called me ugly too. So I started to believe it. I told Theo a lot about Fred. I mean, I had a lot to get off my chest. You know, that's just who he is as a person. He feels good about himself when he puts other people down. Relationships shouldn't be like that. If I were you, I'd break up with him. Oh, no. The thought of breaking up terrified me. I couldn't live without Fred. In the end, Theo convinced me to agree to the magazine's offer. I called the agent back in the morning. He quickly sent me a contract, and I signed it. Soon, my photo appeared on the cover of an online magazine. Fred definitely would not have liked that, so I didn't tell him anything. I decided I would hide it from everyone. A couple of days later, I got a call again and I was invited to a photo shoot. It was taking place in my hometown. I was terribly nervous. Theo called and calmed me down. When I arrived on the photo shoot, they gave me a cool Marvel outfit. At first, they were only taking photos of me, but then a guy joined me. His name was Dave, and he was gorgeous. To be honest, even more so than Fred. But just look at him! Handsome, right? Of course, I immediately got shy and I didn't know how to act. But Dave turned out to be really nice and super friendly. He comforted me and gave me some tips on posing. After the photo shoot, he invited me to a cafe. We drank coffee and chatted, and Dave paid me a lot of compliments. So I relaxed pretty quickly. It was so weird. He was the second person to call me beautiful. I think I started to believe it a little. However, as we were leaving the cafe, I suddenly noticed Cleo nearby. She was looking right at us and smiling maliciously. Damn it. She was gonna tell Fred about it. And I was right. In the evening, he came over. Who was the guy you were with at the cafe? I was about to explain everything, but I suddenly changed my mind. I remembered how Fred talked about Cleo, so I just told him the same thing. He's just a friend of mine. You should have seen Fred's face when I said that. He was annoyed, but he didn't say anything else. We were hanging out in my room when he suggested we watch a movie. He took my laptop, opened the browser, and damn it, busted. I had a tab with the magazine's website open. Fred saw the picture of me on the cover and fell into a stupor. Then he got angry and started yelling. "What were you thinking?" I bit my lip nervously. I had to admit that I'd worked as a model and hadn't told anyone about it. Sort of leading a secret life. Fred got mad, abruptly stood up and stormed out. He even slammed the door on his way out. I couldn't sleep all night. To be honest, I was worried that he would break up with me. I went to college in the morning in a terrible mood, but I was in for a surprise. Fred was waiting for me by the entrance with a bouquet of flowers. It was crazy. I hadn't gotten gifts from him in so long. He acted strange all day. Didn't scold me, was super attentive. After classes, he even asked me out on a date. I was supposed to go to a photo shoot, but I called Dave and asked him to cover for me. Fred and I went for a walk into the cinema, and we had a great time. And at the end of the evening, he asked me not to work for a magazine anymore. I told him that I'd already signed a contract, so I just couldn't refuse. And Fred started to get annoyed again.
What's more important to you? Some stupid photo shoots or a relationship?
I promised I would think of something. I came home and I immediately called Theo. I told him that Fred and I were doing great. I thought my cousin would be happy for me, but for some reason, he doubted that.
Just because Fred changed tactics doesn't mean he's a changed man. He's still gonna keep trying to manipulate you. Don't you see?
I shouldn't have called him. I didn't want Theo to ruin my mood, so I hung up. The next day was supposed to be my day off, but in the morning, the magazine called and said they had moved the photo shoot from the previous day, and I was to come at once. I couldn't get out of going, and I just hoped that Fred wouldn't find out about it. I posed with Dave again, and we looked so cool. Transforming for photo shoots turned out to be really interesting. I was growing to love it. It might be a little hard to believe, but I even liked the photos. Was I really as beautiful as it looked? Everything was going great until the end of the photo shoot. Fred suddenly burst into the studio. It was a nightmare. He threw a fit and demanded that I leave with him right that second. He grabbed my arm and started dragging me away. Dave suddenly intervened.
Hey, let her go. You have no right to treat a girl like that. Amber doesn't belong here. Her? A model? Don't make me laugh.
Dave came to my defense and suddenly pushed him. Fred was about to push back, but the security guards separated them and demanded that Fred leave. He looked at me angrily.
If you don't come with me now, we're breaking up. Got it? Nobody would want you but me. Nobody!
And at that moment, something clicked in my head. Why was I even with this guy? He was a narcissistic jerk. It suddenly dawned on me that Theo was right. Our relationship wasn't a good one. I didn't want to be with Fred anymore, and I chose to stay in the studio. Fred left, slamming the door as usual. Dave supported me. He suggested we go shopping and take our mind off things. So we went to several different shopping malls. I had just been paid for the first time, and I bought some new clothes with the money. Then I went to a beauty salon and got a few different treatments. I felt like a completely new person. When I came to college after the weekend, everyone noticed my transformation. One of my classmates had even seen my photo in the magazine. Now, everyone knew that I was moonlighting as a model. All of a sudden, I became popular. Everyone in college was talking about me. They were complimenting me and asking me about the photo shoots. Weirdly enough, I didn't feel shy anymore. I liked being the center of attention. At one point, Fred came up to me. He said that he was overreacted and wasn't actually gonna break up with me. And I don't know why, but that made me laugh. Maybe you're not gonna break up with me, but I'm dumping you. I respect myself too much now to date a guy like you. Fred was absolutely stunned. He definitely was not expecting me to say that. Our classmates heard our conversation, and they were also surprised by my behavior. But I noticed that most of them supported me, especially the girls. Cleo suddenly came up to Fred. She took his arm and smiled at me triumphantly. Well, I could only really feel sorry for her. My popularity grew rapidly. I was starting to learn to value myself. I realized that no one had the right to pressure anyone or to forbid them from being themselves. Dave and I started dating. I also talked to Theo a lot. He's writing his term paper on the topic of relationships. I still pretty often ask him for advice, and I'm really glad I had such a nice cousin. He's coming to visit us soon. Fred and Cleo are still dating. She used to be very vibrant, but now it's like she's a shadow of her former self. Yeah, but little wonder with a boyfriend like that. Fred seems to be a hopeless case. Do you have any friends like him? Tell me in the comments down below. P.S. A word of advice, if you do, get away from them immediately.
If you're watching this, you've already breached the SCP Foundation protocols. Stay where you are. The cleanup team is on the way. In the meantime, you can watch stories of the people who were lucky enough to encounter the most anomalous SCP objects. When the Foundation staff arrives, you will be treated by Class A amnestics and you won't recall anything. This record will self-destruct in 3, 2, 1.